Imagine an entire civilization, a true naval superpower, just wiped off the map. Their libraries burned, their stories vanished, their entire history told only by the people who conquered them. That was the fate of ancient Carthage. But what if I told you that one single story, a thrilling 2,500-year-old travelogue, somehow managed to survive? Well, let's dive into this incredible piece of history.
So Carthage was a major player back in the day. We're talking about a massive maritime empire based in what's now Tunisia that basically ran the trade routes across the Mediterranean. But they had a huge rival, Rome, and that rivalry ended with Carthage being completely and utterly destroyed in 146 BCE. The city, the people, the records, all gone. It left this giant black hole in history, and for centuries all we had were the very biased stories told by the Romans.
And that's where this gets so amazing, because we have this one text, this one explorer's journal that somehow slipped through the cracks. And it's not some dry report. It's a first-hand account of a journey into a completely unknown world, packed with strange encounters, mysterious landmarks, and a final, shocking climax that people are still arguing about today.
That journal is called the Periplus of Hanno. It's literally the only piece of Carthaginian exploration writing that has survived. And boy, does it tell a story.
Now, the word periplus just means a sailing around. You should think of it like an ancient captain's log. It wasn't written to be some great work of literature, it was a practical guide. You know, recording distances, landmarks, stuff that other sailors would need to know. But Hanno's account, it's just so much more vivid than that. The story of how we even have this text is just mind-boggling. Originally, it was carved onto a tablet in a temple in Carthage. Of course, that tablet was destroyed with the rest of the city. But luckily, before that happened, some Greek visitor must have thought it was interesting and copied it down, translating it into Greek. And that Greek version was then copied by hand by scribe after scribe for more than 1,000 years. It's an incredible chain, hanging by the absolute thinnest of threads.
So now for the fun part, mapping an ancient voyage. With this fragile ancient text, historians have been trying to do the impossible. Retrace a 2,500-year-old journey down the coast of West Africa. Let's see what Hanno's mission actually was.
Okay, so the plan laid out in the Periplus was incredibly ambitious. Hanno had to lead this huge colonization mission. He had to sail right out of the Mediterranean, past the Straits of Gibraltar, what the ancients called the Pillars of Hercules, then set up a whole string of new settlements to lock down trade routes, probably for gold. And after all that, he was supposed to just keep going, push as far south into the unknown as he possibly could. And the scale was, well, it's kind of hard to believe. The text says he took 60 ships packed with 30,000 men and women. Now that number is a huge point of debate. I mean, trying to fit 500 people onto an ancient ship, that seems pretty much impossible. Some historians think 5,000 is a more realistic number, but hey, either way, this was a massive, state-sponsored operation. And this brings us to the million-dollar question. Where exactly did he go? This map shows one possible route, stretching way down into the Gulf of Guinea. But the thing is, the landmarks are described from an ancient point of view, so trying to match them to a modern map is a giant game of historical detective work.
And believe me, the debate is fierce. Some scholars are convinced he barely made it past southern Morocco. Others argue he sailed thousands of kilometers further, all the way to the equator, maybe even to Mount Cameroon or Gabon. The answer completely depends on how you read the clues in his logbook.
And the logbook does give us some really tantalizing clues, things we can actually check. He talks about meeting a friendly tribe, the Lixotai, who gave him interpreters. He describes sailing along a massive desert coast. And, crucially, he finds a giant river just teeming with crocodiles and hippos, which almost everyone agrees has to be the Senegal River. These details make the account feel really authentic. But the text itself has some serious problems. Which brings us to our next section, mistakes in the manuscript. See, the problem is, after being copied by hand for century after century, the document we have today isn't perfect. It's full of mistakes, scribal errors, and these little mistakes can completely change how we understand the entire voyage. You have to remember, this is way before the printing press. Every single copy of a book was made by a person, by hand. It was slow, tedious work, and mistakes were just bound to happen. A tired scribe might misread a letter, skip a line, or, and this is a big one for Hanno's journey, mess up a number. So get this is probably the biggest one. At one point, our surviving text says Hanno sailed along the desert for 2 days. But in ancient Greek numerals, the number 2 looks an awful lot like the number 12. A lot of scholars are pretty sure the original actually said 12 days. Now that one tiny slip-up is the difference between traveling a couple hundred kilometers and traveling well over 1,000. It changes everything.
But here it comes. This is the most famous potential error of them all. Towards the end of the trip, Hanno sees this huge volcano erupting at night. The Greek text we have calls it Theon Okema, which means the chariot of the gods. But many believe the original word was Theon Oikema. It's just one letter difference, a K sound versus a cha sound, but that tiny change swaps the meaning from chariot to dwelling or seat.
Okay, so why does this matter so much? Because there's a massive active volcano right where Hanno might have been, Mount Cameroon. And guess what the local name for that volcano is? Manga Maloba, which translates to the seat of the gods. If this was a scribal error, it's basically a smoking gun, a huge piece of evidence that Hanno made it all the way to Cameroon. One letter could solve the whole mystery.
All right, so as if a 2,500-year-old explorer's log with the potential scribal error mystery isn't cool enough, the story is about to take a really unexpected turn. We're going to see how this ancient voyage echoes through time, connecting a Carthaginian explorer to one of the most famous novels ever written.
Just listen to Hanno's own words here, describing a night anchored off the coast. During the day, nothing but an endless wall of trees. But at night, the whole shore just comes alive with fires, the sound of drums, and the shouts of a massive crowd he can't see.
Now listen to this. More than 2,000 years later, Joseph Conrad writes this passage in his novel Heart of Darkness. The wanderers on a boat, the curtain of trees, the roll of drums at night, the great human murmur coming from an unseen shore. The parallels, they're just uncanny.
So what are we supposed to make of that? It's really, really unlikely that Conrad ever even read the obscure Periplus of Hanno. So is it possible that the experience of sailing into a world you do not understand, up some unfamiliar river, just evokes such a fundamental, timeless human response that two writers separated by 2.5 millennia would describe it in almost the exact same way?
Which brings us to our conclusion, the unsolved Hanno mystery. Because in the end, Hanno's voyage is still one of history's great puzzles, and it's capped off by a final encounter that is as bizarre as it is unforgettable.
So at the farthest point of his journey, Hanno says they found an island full of what he calls wild people, who were hairy all over their bodies. His interpreters told him they were called gorillae. They tried to capture some, but couldn't get any of the men. They did manage to grab 3 of the females who, according to the text, fought back so viciously that the sailors had to kill them. Then they skinned them and brought the skins back to Carthage as proof.
And here is the final absolutely incredible twist. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder wrote that those very skins were still on display in a temple right up until the day Carthage was destroyed. And then, thousands of years later, in 1847, when Western scientists first officially described the great ape that we know today, they needed a name. And they reached all the way back into Hanno's strange little travelogue and chose the name gorilla.
Hanno's Periplus is nothing short of a miracle. It's a tantalizing, frustrating, and deeply human story. And it really forces us to ask a tough question. How much of our picture of the ancient world is actually based on what happened, or is it just built on the handful of stories that by pure dumb luck managed to survive the flames of history, complete with all their fascinating flaws?
The distant yesterday.